Good morning. Welcome to the Saturday, February 11th, 2023 edition of Just Parlays with Chris King. I, of course, am your host, Chris King. A lot going on in the world of sports. It's the busiest day of the season for college basketball, of course, with it being the day before the Super Bowl. You won't see as many games on the slate tomorrow in any of the sports because nobody wants to try to compete with that. Quick look at tomorrow's schedules shows not a lot of excitement to be had. You look at the NBA, they've got just two games tomorrow. Would be Memphis and Boston at 2 p.m. on ABC. Detroit and Toronto play at 3. The NHL has 4 games. Edmonton and Montreal at 12:30. Seattle at Philadelphia at 1. San Jose at Washington at 1. And then Anaheim and Vegas, the late game at 3 p.m. Even college basketball, a much lighter slate tomorrow than today, which, like we said, it is to be expected. But just about slightly more than a dozen games on the schedule tomorrow. Only one ranked team playing tomorrow. That's number 1 Purdue. They'll play Northwestern in Evanston. The latest tip-off at college hoops, SMU, Wichita State at the Charles Cook Arena in Wichita, tipping at 4 p.m. in an AAZ matchup. But like I said, not a whole lot of marquee matchups to be had tomorrow by any stretch of the imagination. Because, like we said, tomorrow everybody's going to be tuned into the Super Bowl and ready for that, which makes perfect sense. Trade deadline was this week in the NBA. We saw some big moves. Whether they pan out or not is going to remain to be seen. Of course, Kyrie Irving, we talked about it last week when he demanded his trade, was dealt to the Mavericks for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, and some draft picks. You have to wonder, will Irving thrive with Luka Doncic? Will this be the move the Mavs need to become a threat in the West? Time's going to tell on that front. But based on their track record, they went out and got Porzingis a couple of years ago. That didn't work out. Irving is quite the mercurial player. He's got missed a slew of games in the last few years. And it'll be interesting to see how he meshes with that Mavericks team. Then, of course, the big news going into the deadline was Kevin Durant getting traded. And you have to wonder, I know everybody's like, well, that's going to make the Suns one of the top teams in the West. But you have to think about what they gave up, too, because they lost Cameron Johnson. They lost Mikal Bridges. Those guys both gone. Those are 2 very good wing defenders for Phoenix, who were such a key in their playoff run last year. Now the question is, who do they have to shut anybody down on the wing? Because now you're going and relying on Torrey Craig as your ace shutdown guy, and you're not going to get a whole lot of production from him on the offensive end. And you're talking about a guy who's averaging less than 8 points a game. So if he gets lit up at all defensively, you have to be concerned what kind of hole you're going to put yourself in. Because with Doncic and Kawhi Leonard and the rest of those wings in the West, the Suns, they took a big chunk of their depth out with that trade. Sure, they've got Durant and they've got Ayton and they've got Booker and they've got Chris Paul, but can those guys actually step up defensively? That's going to be the big question that we're going to have to look at going forward. Morning, Crystal. Yep. Baseball spring training starts, I believe, next week. We're only about, 6.5, maybe 7 weeks until the start of baseball season. But still a lot of stuff to go before we get to that point. You got the NHL Trade Deadline coming up in a few weeks, March 3rd. So we're about 3 weeks away from that. saw a couple of big trades already in hockey. But we've got that. We've got March Madness that'll come up before we get to meaningful baseball. I know spring training is a big thing, but until we actually get to games that count in the standings, a lot of other stuff to watch out for. Speaking of hockey, it'll be interesting to see who else gets dealt. We saw Vladimir Tarasenko get traded the other day by the Blues to the Rangers for a fourth-round pick in 2024, a first-round pick in 2023, Sammy Blais and Hunter Skinner. Hopefully Tarasenko can get back to playing the way he was back when they won the Stanley Cup a few years ago. He's been mediocre this year. 29 points in 38 games, 10 goals, 19 assists. He was a minus 18. And he's dealt with some injury issues as well. He did score in his debut last night for the Rangers as they beat the Kraken 6-3. But it's a trade they needed to make to try to bolster their top six. St. Louis is probably going nowhere. Let's be honest. And it'll be interesting. Also, I want to see where Timo Meier ends up. You know, he's a free agent at the end of the season, but he's a big threat in San Jose. I'm sure that the price tag on him will be steep for whoever acquires him. But there's still a lot of other good, big names out there that could go. We saw Bo Horvat get dealt a couple weeks ago to the Islanders. He signed a new deal worth some pretty hefty money because, hey, the Islanders had to do something to try to get some offense. What else did we see? We saw Russell Westbrook get traded. He'll probably join the traded to but never play a game for the Jazz, who are going to buy him out. The Clippers are trying to push to get him after they traded away John Wall and Reggie Jackson at the deadline. Does anybody really want Westbrook at this point? You know, he's not a good offensive player at this point of his career. He's pretty good at shooting bricks. You look at his numbers, and they're not anywhere near the numbers he put up when he was the MVP several years ago. You know, he's shooting 41.7% from the floor this season. He was down to 37.2% in his last 10 games. And you have to wonder, does he have much left? I mean, you go back to some of the better years in his career, 2016-17, he had averaged 31 points, 31.6 points, 10.7 rebounds, 10.4 assists. Has been a downward trend since then. He had a positive blip in 2019 with Houston when he averaged 27 points a game, but then he's gone down to 22.2 with Washington. Then it was 18.5 with the Lakers last year. Now it's 15.9. Like I said, his shooting percentages have been terrible. 41.7% from the field, 29.6 from three. His free throw percentage is 65.5. He's averaging only 6.2 rebounds, 7.5 assists. He's 34 years old. You have to wonder what he's got left in the tank at this point. But we'll have to wait and see what happens there. If he ends up being bought out and going somewhere else as a free agent or not. Just trying to think what other. We saw a lot of fringe trades. You know, Bones Highland got traded by the Nuggets to the Lakers. They got Thomas Bryant from the Lakers. The big trade the Lakers made was the one to get D'Angelo Russell back in a 3-team trade that sent Mike Conley from Utah to Minnesota. I'm sorry. Westbrook went to Utah with first round pick in 2027. What other trades did we see that were big? We saw, just scrolling through to try to remember because there were a bunch of them. There's the 4-team deal that might not take place because with the Warriors, the Pistons, the Hawks, and the Trailblazers, because Gary Payton failed a physical. We'll find out later today if Golden State's going to void the trade or accept it for what it is. We saw the Lakers trade Pat Bev to Orlando for Mo Bamba. The Celtics got Mike Muscala from Oklahoma City for Justin Jackson, a couple second-round picks. Jay Crowder was traded twice. He was part of the trade that sent him from Phoenix to Brooklyn in the trade for Durant. Then he went to Milwaukee in a three-team trade that also involved Indiana getting George Hill, Jordan Nwora, and Serge Ibaka, so the Bucks could clear some cap space. The Clippers got Eric Gordon in a three-team trade that sent Luke Kennard to the Grizzlies. The Rockets got John Wall and Danny Green, along with swap rights in the draft this year. The Clippers also got Mason Plumlee for Reggie Jackson. So they now have a center. The Pelicans got Josh Richardson for Devontae Graham and 4 second-round picks. A lot of second-round picks getting thrown around for, like they mean nothing. Portland got Matisse Thybulle from the 76ers in a 3-team trade that sent Jalen McDaniels in a couple seconds to Philadelphia. Charlotte got Svi Mikhailiuk and a couple second-rounders because, let's face it, it doesn't matter what they get because they're going nowhere this season in a hurry. Jakob Poeltl got traded to the Raptors for Khem Birch, a first-rounder and a couple second-rounders. I mean, Toronto could use another center. And Birch wasn't really contributing a whole lot when you get right down to it. So it was interesting to say the least on that front. But yeah, a busy trade deadline to say the least. Brody, I wouldn't root for the Chiefs, and I don't do music videos. That's Rocky's bag. He has all that heavy duty editing equipment and stuff. That's why that was one of the big draws with the show was, he and Steen did all the scripting for the skits on that show. They put a lot of work into that. And it was a lot of fun this season. I mean, let's face it, if you didn't see Once Upon a Time in Las Vegas, the rise and fall of the greatest sports betting show in the world, I think that in the world was in the tagline. I can't remember. But it was good. It was a good time. We all had a lot of fun doing it. And if you haven't seen it, go to the Winners and Winners YouTube channel and check them out. They're all there. You can go back and watch from week 1 and all the way through the Super Bowl prediction, which this week had a cast of thousands, literally. It was everybody was there. It was Steen and Rocky and myself and Rachel and Dave Delano and Mason and Loud. Everybody was there this week. Threw a lot of stuff out there. It was amazing how we could talk for an hour and a half plus about one game. But yeah, we all had a lot of fun. I want to say thanks to Rocky Foray and his editor / producer Matt Robertson and Steen and everybody for putting that together. We all had a great time, and hopefully there'll be a season 2. We'll have to wait until the fall to find out about that. It's kind of like TV, see if it gets picked up for another season. But on that front, tomorrow's the last game of football. Unless, at least for the NFL, the XFL is coming. The USFL is coming. So, I mean, there'll still be football. The XFL starts next Saturday. That's right. Don't you dare miss it. You'll get to see the Vegas Vipers take on the Arlington Renegades at 3 o'clock on ABC. And the Orlando Guardians will take on the Houston Roughnecks on ESPN at 8:30. And then on Sunday, if you didn't get enough football in the XFL, you'll get to see the St. Louis Battlehawks take on the San Antonio Brahmas. That's at 3 p.m. on ABC. And at 8 p.m. on Sunday on ESPN, the Seattle Sea Dragons taking on the DC Defenders. So changed around a few names there, but it's all good. As for the USFL, trying to see when there we go. There's their schedule just came out a couple of days ago. The USFL will get underway. Ooh, look at that. 4 different cities are going to host games. Detroit, Memphis, Canton, Ohio, and Birmingham, Alabama. The USFL starts April 15th. So you can watch the XFL until April. And then you can watch the USFL going into the summer. And from what I understand, the Arena Football League is talking about making a comeback. So, I mean, that's a plus too. I remember the old Arena Football League. It was very exciting. It was very exciting stuff. They're going to return. Oh, okay. The Arena Football League is going to come back next season, so we won't get it this season. But still, that's a plus. The Arena Football was very entertaining stuff when I was on before. They're going to have 16 teams next year. So, good for them. I don't know if they're going to have how long it's going to take them to come up with the teams, but hey, it'll be entertaining for sure. If you haven't checked out Arena Football, you should. Skillwell, you're in my neighborhood, basically. Because hopefully you're not driving on Woodruff Road. Danny Daniels asking about Kentucky and Georgia. Well, Georgia pissed me off the other day because I took them to beat Ole Miss, and they didn't. First meeting between these teams, Georgia was up at the half, lost by 14 at the Rupp Arena. They were ahead 34 or they were up 42-34 at the half, then got outscored 51-29 in the second half. Ended up getting obliterated on the boards. Tshiebwe went batshit in that game. 37 points, 24 rebounds. By comparison, the entire Georgia team had 31 rebounds. The big thing that you have to watch for is watch for the status of Terry Roberts. He didn't play the other day with a concussion. I haven't heard anything if he's going to be playing today as of yet. If he doesn't play, Georgia's going to struggle. I mean, he's their leading scorer. He's very good on both ends of the floor. But even if he does play, I think Kentucky's going to win the game. They're just because of their advantage on the glass and their advantage inside. I mean, I like Kario Okendo, but he's only 6'4". And I like Bridges. He's 6'11", but he was dominated in that first game by Tshiebwe. And Georgia doesn't have a ton of height, let's be honest. You know, Roberts is 6'3", Okendo's 6'4", Justin Hill is 6 foot even. Like I said, Bridges is 6'11". McBride is 6'2". And outside of Bridges, their tallest guy next to is 6'8", and he plays about 18 minutes a game. I think Kentucky wins but they're not great necessarily on the road. You look at their road schedule. They lost to Gonzaga back in November. They lost to Missouri in December. They got blown out by Alabama. They beat Vanderbilt. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Tennessee was their signature road win. They'll probably win. I don't know if I trust them to cover. And I think it'll go over the total. I mean, the first meeting had 156. And even with Georgia struggling offensively without Roberts, they still had 74 points the other day in that 4-point loss and went to 152. So I think that game ends up over. I think Kentucky wins, but I'm not trusting that they're going to cover the line in that game. And with that said, we can take a look at some of the top options for today. Also, before I do that, make sure that you like and subscribe. Ring the bell so that way you know when we're going to be on. Every time there's a new video up, you'll get notified about it. I don't know if that notifies you guys about the daily videos or not because I haven't done them. But yeah, like and subscribe, ring the bell, get notified when stuff goes up. Of course, if you're not new here and you've been here before, you know that we're on at 9 Eastern on Saturdays. Still working on trying to push it to where we can be on more often, but it's a work in progress. Also, on the premium side, if you want to get premiums, we've hit 3 parlays this week on the premium side that we're putting up over 30 units for the week. There's a promo code right across the bottom of the screen. Now's the best time to jump in. 70% off. How can you pass that up? Instead of paying $100 for a month, you can get it for $30. So use the promo code on the bottom of the screen. If you don't want to do the parlay side, you can always get single game best bets as well. Promo code still works the same no matter what you do. Just punch it in and save yourself some money. And like I said, we're up over 30 units this week on that front. Looking to keep it going. We hit one Sunday, we hit one Monday, we hit one Wednesday. And today's a jam-packed day, as everybody knows. So jump in and put some money in your pocket. Why not? Takes us to 3 for the money. We're going to start with the Bruins over the Capitals. Not a real surprising pick. Let's face it, Washington struggling this season. Keep the puck out of their own net. The Caps come into this game 5th in the Metropolitan Division, 27-20-6. They have a goal differential of plus 14 on the season. Meanwhile, they have to go and take on a Boston team that's 39-7-5 and who have picked up points in 25 of their 26 games on home ice this season at the TD Garden. When you're 22-1-3 at home, you've given up the fewest goals in the league, and you're one of the highest scoring teams in the league. That's usually a pretty good combination for success. I don't trust the Caps on the road. They're one game above 500. Have we just talked about how dominant Boston has been? The Bruins are rested. They're ready. They should have no problem dispatching a Washington team that's going nowhere at the moment. Edmonton over Ottawa. This is a game that starts at 12:30 because there's 372 NHL games today. One of them starts at noon, 4 start at 12:30, one starts at 1, and then there's one at 3:30. That's the Boston game. And then there's hockey all night long. I think it might be Hockey Day in Canada. I could be wrong. The way the schedule looks, you would think it was. But Edmonton, they stumbled the other day in Philadelphia, mainly because they got 0 power plays the whole game. The Oilers thrive on the power play McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman and the rest of those guys. Ottawa is a team that has struggled in their own end. Anton Forsberg is expected to get the start in net because Cam Talbot is not going to play this weekend, according to reports. I'm guessing it's going to be Stu Skinner in net for Edmonton. He played well against Philadelphia and made 35 stops. The problem was they didn't score any goals, and they lost 2-1 in a shootout. I don't think they're going to have a problem scoring goals here. We saw Ottawa give up 4 to Montreal and a 5-4 win in their final game before the break, but they haven't played since January 31st. It's February 11th. Be interesting to see how the rust factor comes in there. And Virginia Tech minus 4.5 over Notre Dame. Virginia Tech has been one of those teams that's been they've been consistently inconsistent. Let's put it that way. They started the year 11-1, lost 7 in a row, beat Duke and Syracuse, then they lost to Miami. Then they upset Virginia last week in a game where I thought Virginia was going to win, even playing in Blacksburg. Then they turned around and puked against Boston College. They were favored by, I think, 13 points or something like that, and lost outright by 6. The one good thing is you can say they're playing a Notre Dame team that's probably more inconsistent than they are. Notre Dame 10-14. They started the year 5-0, 6-1 after beating Michigan State at the end of November. Since then, the wheels have fallen off. We know Mike Bray's done after the end of the year. They're 4-13 in their last 17 games. They've lost 6 of their last 7. And the one win they put up in that stretch was over Louisville at home. You look at their losses since December 11th, lost by 15 to Marquette, lost by 15 to Georgia, lost by 11 to Miami, lost by 17 at North Carolina, lost by 13 to Florida State at home, lost by 12 to Boston College at home, lost by 17 to Wake Forest at home. They're coming off a 2-point loss to Georgia Tech. So they've been swept by Florida State. They've been swept by Syracuse. I mean, this isn't a very good basketball team. They're not deep by any stretch of the imagination. They play 7 guys. And you look at the minutes that these guys play. Goodwin's playing better than 35 minutes a game. Leshevsky's playing about 34 minutes a game. Cormac Ryan is playing about 32 or 33 minutes a game. Wirtz is playing 31. Starling is playing 31. The only 2 guys that play any kind of minutes off the bench, Hammond plays, 16, 17 minutes. And Van Allen Lubin plays about 14 minutes a night. That's it. They got 2 other guys that have played basketball all season long. Matt Zona has played a grand total of about, he's played in 13 games and averaged about 2.5 minutes a game. Dom Campbell's played in 9 games and played less than him. This team has no depth. And if you're familiar with Mike Young when he played at Wofford, they like to actually, play some guys. With Padula and Basile and Mitz and Maddox and Hunter Couture, and, then they've got actual other guys that play minutes. It's a foreign concept. I don't trust Notre Dame. I don't care if they're playing at home or not. Virginia Tech should win this one. If they want to have any chance of making any kind of serious run down the stretch, they play Notre Dame here. They play at Georgia Tech Wednesday. They play Pitt at home. Then they play Miami at home. Then they go to Duke and Louisville and Florida State. You have to think the potential is there for at least 5 wins, if not 6, in the last 7 games of the regular season for the Hokies. They want to get to at least 20 wins to have a shot at a decent at-large bid in the tournament. That means they need to start taking care of business, and I think they start by taking care of business against a Notre Dame team that is going nowhere fast. Now, with that said, that takes us to 4 for the show. Got some ice in here. The Preds over the Flyers. Now, I know we just talked about how the Flyers beat somebody the other day in Edmonton, but they're still a team that's 7th in the Metropolitan Division. The only team they're ahead of is the woeful Columbus Blue Jackets, who basically punted on the season before it started. The Flyers just 11, 13, and 2 on home ice. They give up a lot of goals. Nashville trying to gain some ground in the Western Conference playoff picture. They're 4 points back of Colorado for the final playoff spot in the Central. They're also, just looking here, they are 4 points behind Minnesota for the second wild card spot. They do have 2 games in hand on Minnesota, so they've got that working for them. Nashville had won 5 of 6 before getting drubbed the other night by Vegas. I think they come back with a vengeance against Philadelphia. The Flyers, they're just too inconsistent when it comes to trying to put together a win streak. I don't see them doing it here. As Jesse Ventura used to say, one good move and can't follow it up. That's the Flyers in a nutshell. Kansas -3 over Oklahoma. Now, I know that Oklahoma plays better at home than they do on the road. How do I know this? Well, they beat Alabama by 24 points a couple weeks ago in the Big Ten SEC Challenge. And they hung tough in Lawrence back on January 10th, losing 79-75 on a Tuesday night in the Allen Fieldhouse. However, since that January 10th meeting, Oklahoma's gone just 2-6. They beat West Virginia by 1. Then they lost at Oklahoma State by 16, lost by 2 at home to Baylor, lost by 27 at TCU. They blew out Alabama, like we said. Then they lost by 10 at home to Oklahoma State. They lost by 32 last week against West Virginia. That was a missed call on my part. I thought they would at least hang around and cover, but they were just obliterated in that game. And then they dropped. They were up around early in the second half and dropped an 82-72 decision to Baylor in Waco to fall to 12-12 on the year. They're 2-9 in the Big 12. Meanwhile, Kansas, they come in winning 3 of their last 4 as they beat Kentucky on the road. They beat Kansas State at home. They were beaten soundly by Iowa State last week in a game where we actually backed the Cyclones and talked about it here. But they're coming off an 88-80 home win over Texas on Monday. It's a narrow line, which works because the less points you have to give, the better. And I think Kansas should come up with a win here. I just like the way they're playing. They've got a lot of experience with Wilson and Grady Dick and McCullough. You know, he's been there before. KJ Adams has played well. Harris is a good point guard. They have depth. And Oklahoma, once you get past Sherfield and the Groves brothers, there's not a whole lot to lean on. I mean, Jalen Hill's good in spurts, but he doesn't contribute on a regular basis. And the rest of the guys on the bench, not much to write home about by any stretch of the imagination. Morning, John. Michio as well. Good to see you guys this morning. Hopefully things are going well in your necks of the woods. And hopefully you're ready for quite a busy day when it comes to sports. Because, like we said, I think Hoops Peterson said there's something like 152 college basketball games today. So, busy day. to say the least. We'll look at the NBA. The Knicks giving points at home against the Jazz. Both teams playing the second game of a back-to-back. The Knicks played well for about a half and then fell apart against Philadelphia, losing 119-108. They led 65-59 at the half. They were still up one after three quarters, got blown out in the fourth, outscored 27-15 to take the loss. They went scoreless over the final 2:28 to go down and defeat Utah. On the other hand, rallied from being down 12 with under 5 minutes to go to beat a Raptors team that can't figure out what the hell they're doing. Utah winning 122-116 to snap a three-game losing streak. Lauri Markkanen, 23 points. Walker Kessler, 23 points. And Colin Sexton, 22. But let's face it, this Utah team is they gutted out the heart of the roster there as they traded Conley and they traded Malik Beasley and they traded Jared Vanderbilt. Those were guys that, they're not necessarily big names, but they're guys that provided a boost in the second unit. And without those guys, now you're looking at the bench and it's Silvio Fontecchio and Talon Horton Tucker and Udoka Azubuike and Rudy Gay. Ochai Agbaji is in the starting lineup. It's just not the same team. Clarkson didn't play yesterday. He had an illness. He's listed as day to day. I'm not sure if you'll see him tonight or not. The Knicks, they didn't make any massive deals. They got Josh Hart and they got rid of Cam Reddish, who hadn't played 2+ months anyway. They didn't get rid of Fournier. They didn't get rid of Derrick Rose. So those guys are still taking up space. That's about all you can say about them, is they're taking up space because they're not getting off the bench for Thibodeau. But they still got Randall, they got Brunson, they got Barrett. Quickly has played well. Grimes has been decent. If Mitchell Robinson can come back healthy later this month after his thumb surgery, the Knicks could be they can make some noise in the East. I'm not saying they're going to go very far, but they'll make things difficult for somebody because Thibodeau still preaches defense, and they've got a couple guys that can put up points when needed, and that's important. Yeah, AJ, there's a lot of games, to say the least. Every time you turn around, I kept going down the list of games for college basketball yesterday. I'm like, where the hell's the end of it? And you know what? I'm still looking for it. Speaking of college basketball, in case anybody didn't know, New Mexico State has suspended their season amid new allegations about hazing. And of course, there's the whole controversial thing earlier this year where Mike Peake shot and killed a student from New Mexico and what they called was self-defense. But the statement came out, New Mexico State University is suspending operations for the men's basketball program until further notice. New Mexico State University personnel were recently informed of new allegations separate from the events that took place in Albuquerque late last year involving potential violations of university policy. While those allegations are being investigated, the men's basketball coaching staff has been placed on paid administrative leave. The game scheduled for tonight against Cal Baptist will not happen. Too bad, because I had Cal Baptist picked. But New Mexico State not playing basketball. You have to wonder, is that the end of first-year coach Greg Heyer, who had some success at junior college as a coach, and he spent a year at Northwest Florida State, another basketball power. But you have to wonder what's going to happen with that program going forward. Like we said, New Mexico State not really going anywhere this year. They were 9-15 overall, 2-10 in the WAC. But it's always disappointing to see a team's season get put on the ice for issues off the floor. Like you said, the Islanders over the Canadiens switching back to the ice. Montreal's a team going nowhere, and they're going there. Well, they've pretty much been there all season. You look at the Canadiens, they're second worst in the Eastern Conference, ahead of Columbus. Goal differential of -55. They've lost 4 straight games. They're sub 500 at home. The Islanders 1 point behind Washington for the second wild card spot. You'd have to think that if Ilya Sorokin played anywhere but the Islanders, he'd probably be a Vezina candidate. He's got 5 shutouts. His goals against, I think, is .241. But the Islanders haven't scored with any consistency when he's played. 17, 17, and 4. 241 goals against, 923 save percentage on the season. That's why they had to go out and overpay for Horvat to try and bring in some scoring. Fortunately, they get to play a Montreal team that's not good in their own zone. We said that they've been torched repeatedly. If the Islanders are going to break out offensively, this is a place to do it. Yeah, there's a game at noon, then there's a bunch at 12:30, and then there's another one at 1. So a lot of hockey in the early afternoon today. But that's good, because at least then you have options. You have things you can watch. You don't have to say, well, I'm stuck watching pro bowling or something. No, I thought it might have been Hockey Day in Canada, but apparently that was last month. I thought with the schedule being as busy as it was, that May it was today. Of course, I used to be more used to that, or more in tune with that, because of the fact that, living in Western New York when I was growing up, you could get CBC on, or you get Global. Global was Channel 6. But you'd get Channels 5 and 6, and you'd get CTV, and you'd get CHCH out of Hamilton and all that. So you could see all that stuff. But that's enough waxing nostalgic for the moment. Like we said, the Islanders over the Canadiens. And as you see, if you take the point spreads on the Jayhawks and the Knicks, and the puck lines on Nashville and the Islanders, almost 22-1 on your money there, which is always a plus. Yes, Andrew talking about Roy Gorella and with the onside kick, or the squib kick when he slipped against the Vikings. People forget that Bill Brown was a Pro Bowler 4 times too. He was big back for Minnesota. But those were the days. And that takes us to everybody's favorite part, the shot in the dark. USC and UCF. Yeah, I like USC. I actually have them right here in the shot in the dark. Oregon State's not a very good basketball team. I'm going to be generous on that front, just say they're not very good. Because let's face it, they're a dumpster fire. You look at their run since New Year's Eve, they were 7-6 going into the game against Oregon. Since then, they're 2-10. Lost by 9 at Oregon, lost by 19 at Utah, lost by 20 at Colorado, lost by 12 to Arizona, 5 to Arizona State, lost by 21 at Stanford, lost by 19 at home to Utah, lost by 11 to Arizona State, lost by 32 at Arizona, lost by 15 to UCLA. They hung tough in the first meeting against USC. They lost by 1, but that was back in early December. There are only 2 wins in the stretch since December 21st. They beat Cal. Whoop-de-doo. I can get 4 guys off the street and beat Cal. And they beat Colorado. Oregon State, a terrible team offensively. They don't shoot well. They turn the ball over a lot. They don't rebound. They play at a slow tempo and hope that they can bore someone to sleep. USC, I know they got hammered by Oregon the other day. But this is also a team that beat UCLA. They beat Arizona State. They beat both Washington schools right before that. And they've won 6 of their last 8 coming into this game. They also own wins over Auburn. They've beaten BYU. They've swept Washington as far as that goes. They beat Utah. I think that they shouldn't have much of a problem with an Oregon State team that's not good. Like I said, they don't shoot well, and they've got to face USC defense that's 19th in effective field goal percentage defense. I think it's going to be a tough day for Wayne Tinkle's team on that front. Going up one since I skipped past it, the Cavs and the Bulls. Then I'll get back to UCF. Don't worry, Will. The Cavs and the Bulls. I know Cleveland played last night. They beat New Orleans 118-107. The Bulls, they had chances to make deals. They didn't. They're basically sticking with the same group that they had before, trying to rely on DeRozan and Levine and Vucevic and not much else. Patrick Williams is the only other guy averaging in double figures, and he's right at 10 per game. And let's face it, it's tough because they don't have a point guard. That was supposed to be Lonzo Ball. He still hasn't played. It's been 13 months now since you've seen him on a basketball court. And you have to wonder, is he going to play again this season? And the more time that goes by, the less chances that is. Apparently, the statement coming from Arturas Karnisovas, the vice president of the organization, is you'll get an update after the All-Star break. He said, I don't know regarding him. I think he's making small improvements, but we're going to have more information probably post All-Star weekend. So that means probably not, which is a tough break for the Bulls. But with only those 3 guys, as long as Cleveland doesn't empty out their starting rotation and say, well, we're not going to play Mitchell, we're not going to play Garland, we're not going to play Mobley, we're not going to play Jared Allen, you have to think that they can take care of business against a Chicago team going nowhere. Why is the line so short? Because the game's in Norman, and people are still riding the recency bias of the fact that Oklahoma won by 24 over Alabama a couple weeks ago. That's pretty much the reason why they think that, well, just because they beat Oklahoma or because they beat Alabama, that they can hang tough. And I mean, you throw in, like I said, it was a 4-point game in the first meeting in Lawrence, but that was, 4 or 5 weeks ago, and a lot's changed for these teams since then. But yeah, you mix those 2 together and you get a short number. I still think Kansas should win by at least 5 or 6. They just have too much talent for Oklahoma. UCF. All right. Let me see who UCF is playing because with 152 games. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. Oh, UCF is playing Tulsa. Tulsa sucks. UCF got back on track. They beat Wichita State the other day, snapped a 5-game skid. But you look at the teams that UCF lost to in that 5-game stretch, and it was Tulane, South Florida, Houston, Temple, and Cincinnati. So, I mean, they lost to some good teams. Tulane, they just beat Memphis on the road in overtime. Then they beat Cincinnati in overtime at home. Tulane's got 16 wins. They're 9-3 in the conference. South Florida, South Florida's not as good as I thought they were. 10-14. They got beat by Memphis the other day. But when they beat UCF, they were playing some decent basketball. Houston, of course, they're 23-2. We know how well the Cougars have played this year. And they just beat Tulsa 80-42 the other night. Temple, 14-11, but they own a win over Houston. They've also beaten some good teams along the way. Beat VCU, beat Villanova, beat Rutgers. Just taking a look here. Cincinnati 16-9. They've beaten some decent teams in the conference. They've also beat up on some crappy teams. What's the line on that game? Let me look. Let me open up tab number 406. As long as it's not like UCF by 472. UCF by 14.5 at home. Tulsa's 0-9 on the road. I see in some books it's going up to 15. Tulsa's 0-9 on the road. They've only covered one. They're 1-8 against the number on the road. For the season, Tulsa's 3-18-2 against the number. UCF should win this one by at least 17, probably 20. I don't have any reason to have any faith in Tulsa. If this game was at Tulsa, it might be closer. But you're looking at Tulsa, they're 297 in offensive rebound percentage, 258th in effective field goal percentage, 303rd in three-point shooting, 335th in free throw shooting, 352nd in two-point defense, giving up better than 56% from the floor. They're horrible at defending the offensive glass, and that's something UCF is good at. UCF is 17th in the nation at offensive rebounding percentage. Tulsa defensively 346th in that category. I'm taking UCF. I'm taking UCF in a rout. I'll give the points. I don't care because Tulsa is just that damn bad. Alabama's short because the game's in Auburn. Going to be a clash of styles because, Auburn, we saw them in that rock fight with Tennessee last week. Game ended 46-43. I thought it was for the first half number, and then I saw it said final. I was like, ooh, well, that game was just terrible, wasn't it? This is a gut check game for Alabama. They're unbeaten in the conference. You have to worry about the look ahead because they play at Tennessee on Wednesday. It's definitely a clash of styles. Alabama, number 1 in the country in tempo. Auburn is still above average in tempo, but they play very good defense. 5th in effective field goal percentage defense, 4th in three-point defense, 19th in two-point defense, 5th in block percentage, 15th in defensive efficiency. The difference in these teams is the way they shoot. Alabama, 63rd in effective field goal percentage, Auburn 229th. And as good as Auburn is defensively, Alabama is even better. 2nd in effective field goal percentage defense, 41.3. Second in 3-point shooting defense. First in 2-point defense. Watch for Clowney because he left with a facial injury the other day in the win over Florida. He was questionable last I checked. If he doesn't play, they'll have to maybe go to Noah Gurley or somebody like that to play the other forward spot. But still, I think Alabama will win a close game. They'll run Auburn into the ground, and they'll play good defense. Alabama still hasn't given up more than 69 points in a conference game this season. It's going to be close, but I'm going to take Alabama. Same with Cornell. I know Brown is an annoying basketball team, but Cornell beat Brown by 7 at home 2 weeks ago. I know they lost both their games last week. They lost to Princeton. They lost to Penn on the road. I think they get the upper hand here on Brown. Cornell still likes to run. They're top 20 in tempo. They shoot the ball well. They're rested because they didn't have to play a game yesterday like we're used to seeing the Friday, Saturday games in the Ivy League. Brown came off back-to-back wins last week. They beat Dartmouth. They beat Harvard. That just means they're primed to go back to reality. They don't shoot well. They don't play good offensively. They don't hit free throws worth a damn. And that'll keep Cornell in the game to potentially steal it late on the road. Denver over Charlotte. Charlotte lost last night. They're playing the second game of a back-to-back situation here. Those haven't been kind to the Hornets by any stretch of the imagination. You look at the numbers on the year, Charlotte in the second game of back-to-backs have been brutal. They're 2-6. They get outscored by almost 6 points a game on average. Against the West, they're 7-13. They give up 118.7 points a game in those situations. They haven't been good at home. They're 7-17 in those games. Denver's pissed off after losing to Orlando the other night. Charlotte had to travel home after losing to Boston. They have the third worst scoring defense in the league. They're dead last in offensive rating. They have basically no business being on the floor with the Denver team, other than the fact that, it's on the schedule. But let's face it, it's not a very good Charlotte team without Oubre, who's been out for a while with that thumb injury. So you're trying to rely on Rozier and LaMelo Ball, and you just traded Plumlee, you traded McDaniels. So now you got Reggie Jackson who's going to try to fit into the lineup. Meanwhile, Denver's, if Murray plays tonight, they'll be pretty much at full strength. I think the Nuggets will win that one convincingly. James Madison over Coastal Carolina. The Dukes have played some pretty good basketball. They struggled the other day against Georgia Southern. But it's tough to win in Statesboro. They ended up falling 3 points short. They should take care of business on the road against Coastal. The Chanticleers were playing some decent basketball earlier in the year, including a win over Louisiana. But they've lost 6 straight games, including a loss to Chicago State, which is right down there with the Green Bays and the IUPUIs of college basketball. 6 in a row. They lost to them. They lost to James Madison by 6 in the first meeting. They lost to Old Dominion. They lost to Louisiana Monroe. They lost to Arkansas State, and they just were beaten by Marshall. Cliff Ellis' team hit a wall. They don't play well defensively. And James Madison should take advantage of that, as they have an edge on both ends of the floor to come up with a road victory in that contest. I'm going to take Clemson with the points. I know that playing in the Dean Dome has been a house of horrors over the years for Clemson. They've lost 2 straight. They lost to Boston College. They lost to Miami last week. I know Rye was very disappointed because he had Clemson on the money line in that game. I think they can hang around in this game. North Carolina has been inconsistent. They won 5 in a row to start the year, then they lost 4 in a row, then they won 4 in a row, then they lost a game, then they won 2, then they lost, then they won 4 in a row again. And now they come in with 3 straight losses. They lost to Pitt by 1, they lost to Duke by 6, they lost to Wake Forest by 7. North Carolina may well win this game to get to 8-6 in the ACC, but I don't want to lay 7.5 points with them, knowing that they could turn around and throw up a dud like they did last time out against Wake Forest, where they're getting beaten out of the building early before they rallied to make it a respectable final. I mean, you look at that game against the Demon Deacons, they were down 47-25 at the half. And they had 44 points with 10 minutes to go in the game before they scored 41 over the last 10 minutes. So they had almost as many points in the last 10 minutes as they did in the first 30. And that's not going to get it done. I think Clemson hangs around. They might lose by, 4 or 5, but they'll cover the line. New Jersey over the Wild. The Wild going in the wrong direction since the All-Star break. They haven't been able to put the puck in the net with any kind of imagination. You look at the numbers, and they scored 2 against the Coyotes. They scored 1 against Dallas. They scored 1 against Vegas Thursday night. That's not going to get it done. The Wild have lost 6 of their last 8. New Jersey's been very good on the road. You figure it out. But they've played very good hockey on the road. They should take care of business. Avalanche over Florida. It's another weird game where Florida played good one night, sucked the next. Colorado got blanked by Tampa Bay in their last game. But they're getting healthier, and that's what makes them dangerous. Florida can't figure out who's going to play goal, whether it's going to be Spencer Knight, whether it's going to be Sergei Bobrovsky, whether it's going to be Leon, whether it's going to be John Van Beesbrook, Mark Fitzpatrick. Hughes may be out. I don't think it makes a difference with the way Minnesota's been scoring, or not scoring for that matter. You scored 2 against the Coyotes, and then you put up back-to-back 1-goal performances against Dallas and Nashville. And it's a Minnesota team that I don't know where their scoring went, but it's definitely not on the ice. They just left it in the press box. Finally, the Sabres over the Flames. It's another situation. Buffalo hasn't played since before the All-Star break. They will have Tage Thompson back, according to Coach Don Granato. Calgary just lost to Detroit the other night, where they scored 1. Before that, they lost to the Rangers in overtime. They've lost 3 of 4, including that horrible 5-1 loss to the Blackhawks right before the break. Buffalo's at home. They should come up with a win in that one. I just don't have faith in a Calgary team that can't put together any kind of consistency. Top play of the day probably is the Bruins. I just don't trust Washington. It's hard to argue with a team that's 22-1-3 on home ice. If you're looking at college, let me look through my list here real quick. In college, I liked Providence, but I know that could be an issue with St. John's. Down the list. A lot of small favorites in college today, which was weird. Toledo, Eastern Michigan, probably over 164 would be one of my top plays in college basketball because those teams will run and pile up points like there's no tomorrow. You look at the numbers, and Toledo just beat Akron the other night by 10. Toledo has scored at least 84 points in each of their last 8 games, all wins. 84, 90, 86, 84, 87. Or, I'm sorry, 91, 81, 84, 84. Okay, so 81 points. They hung 102 on Western Michigan, too. They beat Eastern Michigan 84-79 in the first meeting. Eastern Michigan defensively lately 85, 104, 77, 88, 84, 79, 91. And they're coming off a game against Buffalo where they gave up 102. So I'd probably look for that to go over the total there. So yeah, Boston and then the Toledo Eastern Michigan over is probably my favorite picks for the day. But that will round out the show for today. Enjoy the Super Bowl tomorrow. Like I said, if you haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Las Vegas, it's the season finale with all your favorite guest stars, along with Rocky Foray and, of course, Scott Steen. Make sure you check it out. You can get all our Super Bowl picks, all of our favorite props for the Super Bowl as well. Thanks for being here. Of course, we'll be back next Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you hit the like, you hit the subscribe, you ring the bell so you know when we're going to be on and get all the new content. You use the promo code for 70% off premiums. It's the best deal you're ever going to get because we almost never put it up that high. Normally it's 50 or 60 at most. But hey, 70% off. Use the promo code. Get yourself some premium picks. Like I said, we've hit 3 parlays this week, up over 30 units. Jump on board. Be a part of things. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the food. Enjoy whatever you're going to do. Hopefully the weather's conducive to where you are. Have a great day. We will catch you next week. Same bat time. Same bat channel. For the Winners and Whiners Network and for Just Parlays, I'm Chris King. So long, everybody.